Today we're in section 1.7, multiplying and dividing integers. Multiplying and dividing integers. All right, so it's a different set of rules than adding and subtracting. But before we get into those rules, I just want to do a quick review of the adding and subtracting integers. So remember to use your rules. Same sign, say it with me, add and keep. Different signs, subtract and take. Very good. All right, so let's go ahead and work through these 6 problems. So let's go through these. 12 minus 18, same sign or different? Different. So what do we do? Subtract and take. Negative 6. Negative 30 plus 10, again, different signs. Subtract and take. Negative 20. Negative 20. All right, number 3, negative 8 minus 10. Now, this is where you see a subtraction sign and you might initially think, oh, I'm supposed to subtract these, and so my answer is negative 2. But what you have to remember is they're both negative. They're both trending in the same direction. You can also think of it practically like money. If I spend $8 and then I spend $10 more, well, it doesn't just take $2 out of my bank account, right? How much does it take out of my bank account? $18. So I need to add and keep. 15 minus 16? Negative 1. Negative 20 plus 8? Negative 12. Very good. All right, if I owe someone $20 and I give them $8 back, are they going to say, okay, great, you don't owe me any more money? No, they're going to say, all right, that's fine, but you still owe me $12 more, right? So you're still in the negative. Now, number 6, did you catch the double negative? Yes. All right, so that double negative has to change to a positive, and my answer is negative 5. Anybody get all 6? All 6. Wow, awesome, guys. Anybody just miss 1? Anybody miss 1? Awesome, very good. All right, here's my rules. Rules for multiplying and dividing integers. This is completely different from my rules for adding and subtracting. Odd number of negatives produce a negative answer. An even number of negatives produce a positive answer. So I'm going to multiply and divide like normal, and then I'm going to go back and actually count how many negative signs are in my expression. That helps me determine my answer. Okay, so example 1. In example 1, I'm multiplying integers. So I'm just going to multiply like I normally do. I am going to change number 4 up a little bit, but I just multiply like I would normally do. I don't even look at my sign to start with. I just want to multiply the absolute value of my numbers. So what's 3 times 12? 36. 3 times 12 is 36. Now I go back and I need to determine the sign of my answer. How many negatives do you see in that expression? 2 negatives. 2 is even, so my answer is positive. All right, number 2, what's 7 times 9? 63. So there I've done my calculation. Okay, and would my answer be, well, tell me this, how many negatives do you see in the expression? 1. So would my answer be positive or negative? Negative. Very good. All right, number 3, negative 24 times 0 is? 0. Whoops, didn't mean to put them all up there. Hold on. Just backing it on up. Okay, so negative 24 times 0 is 0. Now, number 4, I'm going to change 89 to 2. That'll make it a little easier to do the calculation. I still just multiply left to right like I normally would. Not worrying about the signs yet. All right, so go ahead and try to multiply number 4, all 4 of those numbers together. 2 times 2 is what? 4 times 3? 12 times 5. 60. So here's my question. Is my answer positive or negative? Positive. Why?
Even number of negatives.
Okay, so I'm specifically counting how many negative signs are in the expression. There's only 2, so my answer is positive. Go ahead and do numbers 5 and 6. All right, so we're multiplying negative 1, obviously multiple times, but does it matter how many times I multiply it? No, it's still going to be 1. Okay, now, Why did I put -1? I see 6 numbers here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 ones. Why is my answer negative? Because there's only 5 negatives. I specifically count the number of negatives. All right. So 3 times 5 times 2 on number 6, what's it going to be? Negative 30, because there's only 1 negative. Any questions? All right, moving on to example 2. In example 2, we're now dividing integers. Dividing these integers. So go ahead and let's start dividing these numbers. On your quiz and your test next week, the calculations themselves are not necessarily going to be difficult. What I am looking for is, can you apply your rules for multiplying and dividing? So even number of negatives is a positive answer. An odd number of negatives is a negative answer. I'll give you a minute to start working through these a little bit on your own, and then we'll talk about it. Right, so just like we did in example 1, we're going to start by just doing the division. What's 48 divided by 6? 8. Is it going to be positive or negative? Positive. All right, so this is where you really have to just keep your rules straight. This is not same sign, keep the sign in your answer, okay? All right, so positive 8. All right, 56 divided by -7. It is 8, but is it positive or negative 8? It's negative 8 because it has 1 negative in the expression. Go ahead and finish numbers 3 through 6. I'm going to walk around and just take a peek at your work and just see how everybody's doing. All right, so 81 divided by -9 is -9. 150 divided by -3 is -50. 0 and -4. Who got them all right? Nice. All right. Great job, guys. All right. Example 3. Now in example 3, I'm going to kind of black out some numbers and just change a few numbers so it makes it a little easier to solve. All right. Number 1, we're working left to right, and this is where, you know, we do need to maybe do some work off to the side by hand since we can't use calculators. But again, the goal here is not to give you difficult numbers to calculate, but yet just to teach you how it doesn't matter how many integers we multiply and divide, we can still apply our even odd rule to determine the sign of the answer. All right, so on number 1, 8 times 3 is what? 24. 24 divided by 6? 4. 4 divided by -2. 2? Well, okay, well, so it's going to be 2. But it's going to be -2. Why? Because there's 1 negative sign in the expression. So we still multiply and divide left to right, and then at the end, we try to determine the sign of our answer. All right, go ahead and try number 2. 5 times 5 is 25, times 3 is 75 divided by 5. Did you get it? Yeah, 15. Now, is it positive or negative 15? Positive, because there's 2 negative signs. Have you done 3 and 4? No. Okay, so go ahead and finish up 3 and 4. I'm going to walk around and check your answers. 2 times 12 is 24, times 2 is 48, divided by 6 is 8. And my answer is -8. Why? Yeah, because there's an odd number of negatives, so it's -8. Look at the number 4. 4 times 6 is 24, divided by 3 is 8, times 8, times 8, not divided, is 64, positive 64. Number 3 was -8, number 4 was 64. Moving on to example 4. In example 4, we have to find the mean. This involves both our addition and subtraction rules and our division rules. So the first thing we do, there are 2 steps of finding the mean. The first thing we do is we add all the numbers together. We combine them all together. Well, if there's a blend of positive and negative numbers, we need to use the commutative property to group our positives and negatives together. So when you're writing this down in your notes, you can go ahead and group your positives and negatives together. What that allows me to do is just add and keep, and then add and keep. So I can add all my common signs together and then keep the common sign. So 30 plus 12 is 42. Now I want you to try to add and keep all these negatives. Okay? So with some of these for the mean, on your test, like I said, like I've already said this lesson, my goal is not to give you very difficult numbers to add and together, but yet also just to just test you on your ability to apply these rules. All right, so it might take a little bit of work, but hopefully not too much. So when we combine all those negatives and add and keep, we get negative 120. Okay, negative 120. Now we could use our mental math skills to actually solve this using mental math. All right, I know that I have different signs here. 42 I could round to 40, and then 120 minus 40, that's easier because I could do 12 minus 4 is 8, and then bring my 0, so 80. But now I take away 2 more, so what's 2 less than 80?
Negative 78.
78. And why would my answer be negative 78?
Because it's an odd number.
Yeah, well, 120 is bigger. No, I'm using my addition and subtraction rules. So I'm looking here. The absolute value of 120 is bigger, and it's negative. Addition and subtraction rules up to this point. However, in the second step, I am dividing. And what do I divide by?
The amount of numbers.
How many numbers are in the set? 6. Now I need to use my division rules, my even odd rule. How many negatives do you see?
4.
1 negative. You are not looking at the original set of numbers to determine the sign of your answer. You are looking here where you're doing the division. How many negatives do you have? How many negatives? 1 negative, so your answer will be negative 13. Negative 13. Do you see the difference? Don't bleed those rules together. If you're adding and subtracting, use your rules for adding and subtracting. If you're dividing and multiplying, use the even odd rule for multiplying and dividing. All right, so in the next one, when I add and keep, I get negative 264. Why did I divide by 6? That's how many numbers are in there. So I add and keep all those numbers to get negative 264. And now when I divide, what will be the sign of my answer?
Negative.
Why negative?
Because there's 1 negative.
Because when I'm actually doing the division, there's 1 negative in the expression, so my answer is negative 44. All right, so keep the rules separate. One more example, example 5, deals with evaluating variable expressions. So this is the algebraic part of it, part of the lesson, where we're now going to make our substitutions and evaluate these expressions. Order of operations comes into play, dealing with negatives. There's a lot of different concepts that come together here. All right, so the first thing we do is make our substitution. Here's our rule. The first rule that you need to remember, and you need to write this in your notes. When you substitute a negative with an exponent, you must put it in parentheses. So you could say, put negatives in parentheses when raising to a power. All right, something along those lines. Something that reminds you, when you substitute a negative number and you're raising it to a power, you must put it in parentheses. This is especially important if you're using your calculators later on to evaluate. If you don't put it in parentheses, it will give you the wrong answer. All right, so go ahead and make your substitutions here. All right, so now the parentheses also tell me that whatever is inside, I'm actually multiplying by that exact same value, however many times the exponent tells me. So what this means is negative 4 times negative 4. Not negative 4 times 2, but times itself. So if I'm multiplying negative 4 twice, how many negatives is that?
2.
It's 2, so would my answer be positive or negative?
Positive.
It's positive. That's why it's 72 divided by 16. Okay, do you see why my answer was positive even though it was negative to begin with? All right, so here's my rule of thumb. If my exponent is an even number, it's going to be positive. The answer will be positive. If my exponent is odd, the answer will be negative. All right, so if it's to the 5th power, if I raise a negative number to the 5th power, will my answer be positive or negative?
Negative.
It's negative because 5 is odd. If I raise it to the 8th power, will my answer be positive or negative? Positive, because that's an even number. 72 divided by 16 gives me 4.5. 4.5. All right, let's try to make our substitutions in the next expression. Okay, so 4, did you put negative 4 in parentheses? Divided by negative 10. Do you multiply first or do you do your exponent first? You do your exponent first. What's negative 4 squared? Positive or negative? Positive, because I multiplied it twice. Divided by 10. 4 times 16 is 64. And you can either do this longhand, okay, so long division to divide 64 by negative 10, or you can remember that since it's a power of 10, to divide, which way would I move my decimal, left or right, on 64 to divide it by 10? I move it to the left. How many places? Not 2, but 1. If I was dividing by 100, how many places would I move it? 2. What about 1,000? 3. It only works for tens, though. If it was 20, it wouldn't work. All right, I'd have to do it long division. But because it's 10, I can move my decimal to the left 1 place to get negative 6.4. All right, go ahead and make your substitution into the last one. When you have your answer, raise your hand. I'm going to come check. Make our substitutions. You guys did really well with that. Negative 4 squared, we know, is positive 16. So since there's only one negative, my answer is negative 32. And if you understand that, that's everything you need to know for section 1.7.